Good evening, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the second half of our public forum regarding Hampstead's reorganization as a single district SAU. First things first, I need to read our electronic meeting statement. As chair of the Hampstead School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen to this meeting by dialing the following phone number: 888-475-4499 or 877-853-5257. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom telephonetically. Instructions have also been provided on the district website at hampsteadschools.net. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please email hmstechnology@hampsteadschools.net. Adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Melissa, will you please call our roll call vote? Roll call attendance, sorry.
Absolutely. Megan Malcolm?
I'm here, and there are family members in the house.
Caitlin Parnell?
Here, I'm alone in the room. There are family members in the house.
David Smith?
I'm here alone in the room, and others are in the house.
Jim Sweeney? Did he have a chance to call in? Okay, I don't think Jim is in attendance right now. I'm going to mark him as absent for now. Karen Yasenka?
I'm here alone in my office. There are family members in the house.
Thank you. And executive consultant, Dr. Metzler.
I'm present in my office, and there are other family members in the home.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, so as a reminder, the purpose of this second half of our public input and forum sessions is to take the questions that came into our designated email address that we gave out last week at the first part of our forum. So basically what we're going to do is read every question. If it's a question that's already been answered previously in this session, I am just going to refer to that and say that it has been answered already. Additionally, we are going to finalize a document that will have all of the questions and the answers that we're giving tonight. And we're going to get that up on the website. We're targeting that by end of day on Friday to be up so that you can have this video to refer to in addition to the document. So I'm going to be reading the questions and answers, but as board members have additional input, they are going to be welcome to do that at the end of each of the questions. Again, as a reminder, we did state that we were not going to take or answer questions about specific personnel, and we are focusing on the SAU reorganization. So if you emailed us a question around either of those things, whether it was something not having to do with SAU reorg, we did read them, and we can apply them to whatever topic you did send in the email about, but for this purpose, we're sticking with SAU reorganization. Okay, just to give everyone full information, we had 12 people who sent in emails. We did have a few more than 12 emails total. We had a couple that sent 2 or 3 emails with different questions on them. So the first question was, will there be a search committee formed for these SAU hires? In the current SAU structure, there are positions that are based on letters of intent versus, and those are renewed on a yearly basis. There are also positions that the superintendent is responsible for nominating, hiring, and or renewing, and those are typically 2 to 3 year contracts for those employees. So looking at this as a whole, what the current SAU structure is that there is a search committee process that typically happens for a superintendent or assistant superintendent. Given that we're in a transition and we're being given the opportunity to reform our district as we want, we are going to be reviewing all of the policies that the current SAU uses and the structures that are in place in the near future to figure out how we want to move forward. Do any board members have any additional input on that question? Okay. The second question was, what is the application to volunteer for a search committee? So again, going back to the current SAU structure, a search committee is typically formed by the governing board, an SAU board, if that is the setup. In our case, it's the school board for Hampstead. But a search committee is formed by the board, and then representatives from the administration, the teachers, the staff, any additional support staff, and the town are asked to participate. Again, given that we're in a transition, we're going to be reviewing all of these policies and structures and figuring out what the best way to go about this is for Hampstead. Any other board members have comments about the question about the process to volunteer for a search committee? No, okay. Number 3, is there any reason that we can't use one of the HCS portables for district office space? We've got that space. It has HVAC and bathroom access to the schools. Transitioning between the portable and the building isn't a safety concern for an adult, and it would save the town nearly $19,000 a year. So here's where I'm going to start. This is an ongoing conversation, but this is why we did not present portables at our presentation last week. As we all know, the portables are over 30 years old. They're not in great shape. Currently, they actually also are being used. So for anyone who's not aware, we had 3 portables in the back of the central school. When the board determined that students no longer should be out there in interest of their safety, we moved everyone inside the building that was going to be, we moved all functions for students inside the building. One of those portables was donated to St. Anne's, and it's currently serving as the food pantry. The remaining 2, one of them is being used for the BZ room for Central School. And for anyone not super up on what the BZ room is, it's utilized for a lot of different things. There is classroom material storage there. It's a prep space for volunteers and for staff to get things ready for the classrooms. They do laminating in there. They do all sorts of different prep work in there. So that space is actually being utilized. And then additionally, the third portable is storage. We've talked about this a lot around Central School. There is no storage. There is just no room for storage of anything at this point in that building. So right now they are being utilized. Additionally, with no bathrooms, this question made the point that going between the portable and the building, maybe for a bathroom, isn't a safety issue for an adult, but you have to remember that we do have visitors who need to come in and speak with SAU staff, whether it's a parent or a vendor or really anyone else who needs to come in and speak to the staff. Should they need to use a bathroom or get water or anything else, they're going to need to be escorted between the buildings. We can't just have people walking in and out of our school buildings. So that is an issue. We also are entertaining and discussing the options about having district SAU space as part of the ongoing HCS renovation plans. So that's something that we're trying to figure out if we can put in there as well. Now, we did get several questions on this. As I read the questions as we continue to go, you'll see that there were several people who brought up this option. So it's something we can continue to take a look at with building administration, but the answer I've given here is the reason why in our proposal that we have not put this forward as an option currently. Any other board members have feedback on this?
Caitlin, it's David. I think another, and it's outside the portable, so maybe we address this later, but you know, we also did look, you know, and we talked about it last week, that we thought that the middle school, you know, we could do some renovations there. But I think one thing that, you know, we could articulate a little bit more is it's not just renovations there. It would be taken away from students and teachers if we were to do anything there with the money that we had stated last week of that $60,000. So that's why we ruled that out. It wasn't only the dollars. It was also that it would take space away from what happens at the school right now and disrupt, you know, the student and teachers' lives during the day.
Excellent point. Thank you, David, for bringing that up. And you're right, we didn't articulate that well last week. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay. Question number 4 was, I noticed on the slides that we currently pay $537,000 for SAU expenses, and projected expenses are $618,000 to $720,000. Since we already cut the 2 positions outlined a year before our solo SAU, I'm not sure how they are reflected as a savings next year. Seems to me that we are spending $100,000 more on salaries/facilities. Also, are benefits and pensions included in the salary figures on the slide you presented last week, or will those add to the cost? So I'm really glad this question came in, because I should have explained this. I should have spoken to this better last week. So going first to the question about the 2 positions that we listed as going towards cost savings. So they were both Director of Technology, and it was the Assistant Director of Special Education. So actually, both of those positions are in the current year budget. We started challenging the administration about 18 months ago to start thinking differently about where efficiency and staffing could be utilized. And they absolutely rose to that challenge to really look differently at how we could staff our schools. We did this knowing that a reorganization of the SAU was likely. That being said, the tech director position is still a line item in the budget. And I know that sounds strange to people. Why would we still have the line item in there? Here's the reasoning. Our budgets are set and developed 18 months before they are actually going to be in effect. So when we were forming the budget for 2020, 2021, that was being done September, October, November of 2019. Our director, excuse me, I'm going to mess up this title. The Executive Director of 21st Century Learning was a very new position at that point. It was only 3-4 months in. We left the funding in for 2020 to 2021 for that tech director position in case this newly formed combination position of the executive director didn't work out. Side note, Mike Flynn is doing fantastic. So I'm just gonna, I don't want to throw him under the bus there. But it's something that's been done in the past where you leave the funding in there for a year to make sure that everything's going to still be up to par and still be what we expect, and then you eliminate it. So we do feel that this still shows a savings because, yes, it'll be eliminated in this next year. The same basically goes for the Assistant Special Education Director. It's still funded in the budget right now. Again, when we were forming the budget for this school year that we're in now, we didn't know about retirements for the next year, so we were still looking at both those positions. And that's also still in discussion. We're still trying to figure out where efficiencies and positions can be made. So that's why those were both shown as savings, because they will be savings if we change to the proposed positions that we listed last week. Additionally, the second part of this question was about benefits and pensions. That they are included in the salary numbers that were presented last week. So the salary line item, if you go back to the document that we put up and the video from last week, that salaries line item includes the benefits. Do any other board members have anything to add here? Okay. Question number 5. Will our service contract prices increase for first student, CAF services, and anything else we currently contract out since our SAU will now be smaller and with less buying power? Will insurance benefits increase in price for this reason? Okay, so one of our biggest costs in the district, well, not one of our, a big cost in the district is transportation. And this is a place where we do see some savings being joined with another district. So we do have some savings there when we go in with another district. I had a conversation today with Mr. Dowd to get some more details here so I could give a really thorough answer. And he is also here. One, board members, if you have anything you want to ask him about this. But so any contract that we go out to bid with, even if we are joining with another district, generally the contracts are in Hampstead's name. So even though we may have gone out to bid with Hampstead and Timberlane, Hampstead has a contract with First Student, let's say, and Timberlane has a separate contract with First Student. So in our current contract with First Student, we have a 5-year contract. It's a 3-year contract with 2 years of options. We do save about $400,000 on busing over the 5 years of the current contract. So if you compare what our numbers would have been by ourselves and what they are going to bid with Timberlane, we do save about $400,000. So again, the current contract with First Union goes through 2021 with options through 2023. That being said, we will still have the opportunity to jointly bid with other districts if we wanted to going forward with transportation. So we could see if Timberlane wants to go bid together, but we could also reach out to other districts. We could reach out to Derry and see if they wanted to go in on a busing bid with us. It's something that, as I was talking to Mr. Dowd, he let me know that plenty of other districts do this, even when they're not in the same SAU. So we're not really losing the ability to do this. We'll still have the opportunity. And yes, we'll just have, even though we were in an SAU with Timberlane, we didn't have to go out to bid with them. And they didn't have to accept going out to bid with us. So we're not, yes, there clearly is a savings in this case when we can jointly bid, but being a single district SAU is not going to stop us from being able to go in on a joint bid with another district. Secondly, for food services, we have never actually had a savings on scale when we've bid out or gone to bid with Timberlane or any other district for food services. So that's just not the way that the food services functions work as far as scale, because even though we're, okay, we can say we're 2,000 students instead of 1,000 students, they're still operating in separate schools, and they're still operating with having to have a food service manager for Hampstead and a separate food services manager for Timberlane. So that's not a place where we're going to see a difference in savings because of the size of our district. As for health insurance, so this was the other, well, insurance benefits. This was the other question, part of this question. So again, I went to Mr. Dowd. He's our expert on this. He's the one who handles all of this for us. And we had a frank conversation, and we don't 100% know what the impact is going to be. Clearly, as a joint SAU, as SAU 55, we were big enough to be our own pool. Hampstead may not be its own pool anymore. And obviously, that's highly dependent on our costs for health insurance and benefits is highly dependent on what claims are like. If we have a lot of claims in Hampstead and we were still partnering with Timberlane and they had fewer claims, that might balance us out and vice versa. But Mr. Dowd has already reached out to Health Trust, who's our provider, and he asked if they could estimate the changes for us, and they said at this point they are not able to provide us with that. They just don't know what the change is going to look like. So we don't know about this question. We don't know what the increase or decrease or change in price might be for insurance. Obviously, if we have a lot of claims, it's going to go up. If we have a smaller pool, we may be joined with another pool. So that's where we are at that point. I know it's not a full answer, but it's what we have at this point. Board members, anything additional you'd like to add to this one? Excuse me. Sorry about that. Number 6, the first part of this question had to do with the portables. Again, I will read it, but some of it's a repeat. It says, is it possible to use the portables for office space rather than renting space? Eventually, some renovation/addition plan will be approved, and when it is, we will be able to build office space. Since this is only in the interim, can we use existing space to save money? I assume it's safe to assume that if we do rent space outside the building, we will be using a real estate agent who does not serve on the school board to prevent any conflicts of interest. I answered the first part of this question already. We do not anticipate using a real estate agent to rent a space. This is going to be a function and a responsibility of the administrator/CFO. Question number 7, could we see a line-by-line school budget forecast for once we're on our own? So we do provide a line-by-line school budget that's available every year at the public hearing, and we would expect to do the same for the 2021-2022 school year. For reference, we are going to post a link within this document to the line-by-line budget from the deliberative for 2020-2021, so you'll be able to access that and take a look at that. Board members, any other questions? Any other input before we move on? Oh, and just so everybody knows, for board members, if you're just like waving at me or something, I'm looking at a document, so I can't see you. So just speak up. Okay. Question number 8. I noticed that any timeline for a superintendent search was not on the timeline for the withdrawal. One line states that one was needed based on a certain RSA. The public has the right to know when and how we will be looking, especially given the language in current contracts and definitive timeframes. Okay, so we've already answered this question, so I'm going to refer back to, I believe it was the first or second question that I answered. And again, when we post this document with all of the answers, we'll put on there where to reference the answer for each question. Okay, on the timeline slide, there was not any mention of the timeline for hiring of the decided upon positions. Although I understand you are not seeking input on specific personnel to consider, I'm wondering if you could share projected timelines for forming a search committee or whatever the plan is. Okay, I'm going to refer again to answer 1 and 2 for this, and also include just saying that we do anticipate we're going to have a final timeline in the near future. This is not something that's going to be pushed out for months and months. So I'm going to refer back to the original, answers 1 and 2 here. Question 11, on the projected budgetary implication slide, you mentioned a savings based on no longer employing a tech director or an assistant special ed director. I was under the impression that those positions had already been eliminated, in which case I'm not sure that they would be applicable to this slide. Yep, so we answered this previously. And again, we're going to put on the document which question to refer back to for this. But as I mentioned, we do still have funding for these 2 positions, so that is why we're counting them as a savings, because as we transition to a new budget year, that's where those savings will be seen. Number 12, SAU office locations. Just a thought, as I know other one-town districts such as Wakefield do this, would it be possible to modify one of the portables for use in the SAU office? I'm not trying to be repetitive, but I am going to say we answered this question already. So we're going to refer back to the previous answer and also just say that this is something we'll continue to look into just because of the number of questions and feedback we have on it, but our current proposal does not include the portables. Question 13, is there any information yet to share regarding if there will be any cost implications from our vendors, such as transportation and food services? This is one we previously answered. As we said, we may have opportunities to join up with other districts for transportation, and food service shouldn't change. We shouldn't have an impact there. Okay. Question 14. I like the idea of the district staff being located on school grounds. It makes them visible and easily accessible to members of the school community. Maybe district offices could be part of a new central school proposal. I know that's not technically a question, but it did go into some things that we wanted to talk about. So based on our discussions that we had around some of the research we've done, and again, as we've mentioned, we talked heavily to the Barrington board chair and superintendent. They have a separate building on the premises, and what we've looked into and what we think is important is that having a separate building, having a separate place for an SAU building and for the administration to be housed, it facilitates a better SAU building administration relationship, as well as a better relationship with the public. It's certainly an area that we're going to look at with any HCS renovation plan that we may submit for a vote, as far as having them in the school. But, you know, we really did look into this, and a lot of feedback we heard from other districts was that there can be some crossover and some lines that are hard to draw when you have SAU employees and building administration in the same, housed in the same building. So that's where we are at this point with this discussion. Anyone else have feedback on this one?
Caitlin, I'll just add on, you know, the conversations when you reference Barrington is, that was one of the things that the board chairperson and the superintendent said separately in two different discussions I had, that they were, you know, they used to have it in the building and they saw a huge benefit by having it as separate, separated from the school. So, you know, this was without prompting either one of them in those discussions, that they both brought it up as a true benefit of the SAU office.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, number 15, what is the timeline for hiring new positions such as superintendent, business administrator, payroll / accounts payable, et cetera? Will a search committee be formed for the superintendent's position? I'm going to refer back to one of our first one or two questions where we did talk about this. And I know everybody wants an exact timeline. We really are working on this. We're not trying to push things out. We're not trying to delay things. To be very frank, if we didn't have COVID going on, if we didn't have remote learning stuff we were trying to figure out, if we didn't have some other really intense issues this summer that we've been dealing with, we might be further along here. But we are fully committed to this. We are moving ahead, and we want to get this resolved for everybody so that we have a clear timeline. So, you know, our first step was to have these forums and put forward what we've been working on for really the last 9 months. I mean, we have been beginning talks about this before withdrawal even went through. So we have been trying to prepare, and we have been working through this. So we are committed to getting a more solid timeline out shortly. Okay, number 16. These questions all came together, so I'm just going to read the full statement. and questions, and then go to the answer. I have a few questions regarding the new SAU reorganization, specifically regarding a new superintendent. How will a new superintendent be scouted? Will there be a search committee? Will taxpayers or parents have input? I am very curious, as there is quite a bit of questions and animosity around current contracts regarding work that was done in the past. I believe now more than ever, Hampstead needs a positive change to bring our community together. There are many parents who feel we do not have a voice. I think we can agree that we must ensure our children and the future of our town come first. I hope you will consider creating a search committee. Let's prioritize a fresh and positive new beginning for our town. Okay, so basically these questions are around, again, search committee and who will have input. So we've already answered these questions, again, in our first batch that we did at the beginning here, and we'll just have you refer back to them. Okay, number 17. Was there any consideration to combine our town with Chester to form a joint SAU? Chester seems to be a similar makeup of our population / demographics, and it is a sending town to Pinkerton, making them even more closely aligned. And then there are two questions to go along with that one. If so, what went into the decision to not move forward with that option? And if not, meaning if you did not consider that, could you provide your reasons? So after lengthy discussions, the board determined that based on our previous experience in a multi-district SAU, Hampstead should focus on being a single district SAU for the time being. In order to properly understand what we need as a single district SAU, we just felt it was proper to focus on our needs in the immediate rather than discussing, again, jumping right back into joining part of a bigger SAU. We do want to point out, if in the future the town decided that they did want to be back in a multi-district SAU, this can be changed. We felt with the current experiences that the district has had over the past few years, it was a better option to really focus on what makes Hampstead a good district and what we need to focus on just for us and not having to consider frankly, other towns' needs. Board members, anyone else want to weigh in here?
I'll add just two real quick things, Caitlin. One is,
Yep.
And thinking about this question, we were talking that it's like going through a bad breakup, right? You don't want to jump right back into a relationship on day two, and we're still going through this breakup right now. So that was one thing. The other piece is that, to create our new SAU, there's a lot that we have to do on our own, setting up policies, positions, job descriptions, everything we're talking about here. So to bring in also the legalities of trying to unite with another district of all the things we'd have to negotiate and walk through, that would really complicate this. So while a great suggestion and maybe something we'll look at in the future to see if there's cost savings and benefits with another district that maybe is similar to our philosophy, right now it just doesn't make sense.
Thank you, David. Any other board comments? Okay. Question 18. I am trying to understand the need for the amount of new positions for a single district when we only needed 24% of 14 positions at the current SAU. I realize 15 positions are listed in the presentation, but we haven't had an assistant superintendent since Dr. Wilson retired over a year ago. So we have effectively been running with 14 positions for 1 year. 24% of 14 full-time employees is 3.4 full-time employees. Can you help our town understand the requirements to have additional full-time employees over our current needs? Okay, so for the positions that we are proposing, they are specialized positions that are standard in many, if not all, other districts. After looking at things for the last 9 months and trying to understand what the specific needs of Hampstead are, we believe that 5 positions is right size for our district. I do want to point out that I understand the rationale behind saying we only need 24% of the current SAU, but we still need someone to handle payroll. We still need someone to handle accounts payable. We still need, in our opinion and what we have looked at, we still have need for a business administrator. We still have need for HR. We still have need for a superintendent. We still have need, frankly, for an executive assistant, as we listed as well. We need all these positions because their functions don't go away even though we're a smaller district. So that's really how we ended up with this number of 5 positions in the current proposal. Any other feedback from board members or answers here? Okay. Question 19, is it possible to utilize an existing trailer for office space even for a year or two? They have served us well for many years and could serve us well again and save us some money with while the SAU model is vetted out for a year or two to determine the real needs of the new organization after it has been active for a while. So we did already answer this question, talking about the portables and why our current proposal does not include utilizing those. Number 20, in previous school board meetings, there have been statements made that the buying power of 2 school districts helps lower costs for Hampstead. Now that we are going to be Hampstead alone for purchasing, what are the impacts to the items such as busing, cafeteria services, health insurance costs, and life insurance costs, and other areas where our costs will be different because we are no longer part of a larger purchasing group? Could these please be forecasted out to include in the proposed budgetary slide for a more complete picture? Okay, so this one we did talk about. We went pretty in depth on what busing and food services, et cetera, will be, and forecasting out what we can, being aware of what we can and where the savings might be different. But I'm going to refer back to our previous answer for this. Number 21, in the proposed budgetary slide from 820, there are 2 line items that say there will be a cost savings to our town due to reduction of positions. Haven't these 2 positions already been reduced and or combined with the duties of existing employees? Okay, so we addressed this previously. This is in reference to the tech director position and then the assistant director of special education. So I'm going to refer back to our previous answer for that. Okay, number 22. In the proposed budgetary slide for 820, there is no mention of any costs for running the new SAU outside of salaries and benefits and then facilities and utilities. From the 2020-2021 SAU 55 budget, there are many other costs to run an SAU. Why aren't these items included in the proposed budgetary slide? Could you please forecast out these items and include them in the slide for a more complete picture? Okay, so this is a great question. And actually this person included, which was super helpful for me trying to go through paperwork and find it, they included the line items of the current SAU 55 budget. So there are items in there such as audit, technology services, things like travel, etc. So these are things that we're going to have to go through and figure out what the budgetary impacts there would be. I did, again, sit with Mr. Dowd today, and he was really helpful with helping me go through and look at these different items. Now, first, I want to say we're going to, in the next, if not the next meeting, the meeting after that, we'll be able to bring forward some numbers and show you what the current SAU 55 number is for these items and what we would be proposing. Most of them are either things that Hampstead already does or has. So for instance, the audit, currently SAU 55 has a Hampstead audit, a Timberlane audit, and then an SAU audit. We already have a Hampstead audit, and where the SAU is just going to be basically the Hampstead School District. We're not going to need a separate audit. So that's an item that, for instance, would go away. There's also a line item in there for in-district travel. So when you have an SAU which has 5 towns, you do need to factor that in when you have employees who are going to be going over a rather large district area. We're no longer going to have that. We may have to have a small number in there for traveling to Pinkerton, perhaps, but at this point, that number is going to be greatly reduced or eliminated altogether. So then there are other pieces like technology services and some contracted services. Those do include some programs that our SAU uses, and it may be something we want to keep, but some of those items are based on volume, which means they'd also be greatly reduced, or it may be that we want to switch to a different program if perhaps it was something that Hampstead already has within the district. So this is a really good question, and we are going to be able to start putting these out more, but for our proposal, when we're looking at the basics of what we're looking to put forward and looking to finalize as far as SAU reorganization structure, you're right, we didn't have those yet, and we are working on those to get them out in the near future. Okay, question 23, when will there be a committee formed to start the search for the open positions? We've addressed this previously, so I'm going to refer back to the earlier answers we gave. And again, as a reminder, when we get the written document posted, this will say right on each of these questions which number question to refer back to. Number 24, who will be on the committee for coming up with the SAU policies, and will the residents have an opportunity to ask questions on the policy documents being created? Okay, so the policy reviews are going to be handled by the policy committee, which we already have in place within the district. If someone was really interested in this, the SAU policies, I believe, are posted on the SAU website. And if you had a specific policy that you wanted to give some feedback on, you could always email it to the board. We have board members on the policy committee, and it could be considered as we go through it. But to answer the question directly, the policy committee that we already have in place will be handling that. Okay, sorry, I had a few in here I needed to clean up. Okay, the next question, sorry, there's a bug. It is my understanding that the savings of the two proposed positions to be eliminated, plus the benefits, have already taken place by elimination of the tech director and the director of special education, thereby eliminating $282,024 in projected savings. This is not actually a question, but I wanted to leave it in here to say, we know that people have asked about this multiple times, and I should have explained it in a better way last week. So I apologize for causing confusion there, but we did explain why they're being projected as savings since they are still in the budget. How many square feet of leased office space is being sought for 5 people? We don't have a specific building in mind yet, or a specific office space that we've selected because we're not there yet. So I don't think we have a specific number in mind. We will continue to work on that and see what our options are, because as we proposed having office space off of our campuses, we still would like them to be in Hampstead, so we're kind of going to be constrained by what's available. But we will look into that and be able to come back with what square footage we're looking at. What is the estimated cost for the leasehold improvements? We do not anticipate any cost at this point, but we also wanted to get this proposed information out to the public, so we're not quite at the point yet that we're looking at any improvements. And again, while we don't have a specific location already chosen, we would certainly strive to pick a location that doesn't need extensive renovations or improvements. We're not looking for a fixer-upper. We'll be looking for something that's ready to go. A follow-up question to this was the estimated cost for furniture, office equipment, computer equipment, software, and network. Those are costs that we're still working on. You know, We do have furniture that's being stored that we might be able to use from our schools. So certainly we'd be absolutely be looking for ways to have savings there and to not buy equipment that we already have. So that's just something that we're just not to that point yet. We have a few more questions.
Caitlin, about that last one, I just think it's important to note
Oh,
that.
sorry, yes.
Yeah, no, I just want just so those that probably don't follow this as close, that we do, we essentially rent the space from Timberlane, and we rent their equipment, their furniture. So if anybody's wondering why we don't have any coming from this breakup, it's because they got everything in the divorce, because they own it. Sorry.
They owned it prior to, so. Thank you, David. Okay, is the assistant special ed director position not being considered to be replaced? Part of the reason for the success of Karen Gallagher is because there were 2 director level individuals. Will we still be 100% compliant, or will things fall through the cracks? This is a great question. We're working on this. As we mentioned in the job description for the superintendent position, we would anticipate the superintendent being able to take on some of the special education responsibilities there. But, we're looking at this. We have been so incredibly blessed with Karen Gallagher and Francine Flynn over the last many years, because we're always told that this 100% compliance is amazing, and it absolutely is. Anytime you get paper after paper coming back saying we are 100% compliant from the state in special education, that is something to be really, really proud of, and we don't want those things to fall through the cracks. So this is all something that we're looking at, but we're also looking at building in responsibilities. We're not looking to eliminate a position and not have anyone else pick up the area that position formerly took care of. So we're still working on that, but we're not going to just toss it to the side and assume that it's all going to be done. The next question is, will the SAU have a separate budget, or will it be rolled into the regular budget since we will be a single district? This is a really good question too. It's going to be rolled into the regular budget. So it's all going to be in there. We'll have like a line item if we move ahead and lease an office space off of our campuses, you'll have a line item for that in there. So, but it's all going to be one budget. I do not see transportation in the organization chart. Who will that responsibility fall under? While it won't need to be full-time, getting those busing schedules correct is a lot of work. Yeah, absolutely. Transportation is a huge piece of the job, and actually the job descriptions, I believe, list, I know where this is, I'm like 95% sure we put it in the job descriptions, that transportation is gonna fall under our combined CFO, BA, HR position. And that's also why we have some of the support roles listed. So we will have people to assist in this as we need it. And that is everything I have for questions that we received within the deadline. I know we had some repeats. I wanted to make sure that we actually put out what the questions were that we received. And again, we are going to go ahead and get this posted. I will say I have to make the document a little bit prettier and not have gibberish all over it with all my little extra notes. So, but we'll have complete questions and answers within this document, so you can refer back both to the video and also to the document for what we're putting out there now. That being said, does anyone have any additional input or additional questions, etc., from board members or administrators if I said something incorrect, especially Jeff, who I talked to, and I hope I represented everything correctly with all of that. But if there's anything I messed up there, let me know.
Nice job.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, I'm not seeing anything else at this point.
I'll just say thanks for the question. Caitlin, I thought there were some really good questions, and I appreciate, you know,
Yeah,
we asked for feedback and discussion and we got it. So thank you.
absolutely.